Welcome to the Movie Heaven, Movie Hell podcast special with me, Simon Aitken.
And I'm Keith Eyles. And yes, we do have a special in store for you today.
Yes. In honor of Future Day, we're going to talk about the Back to the Future trilogy.
Yay. So this is our 88 mile an hour edition. Or the 1.21 gigawatt edition.
Indeed.
Or we could get really obscure and call it the Make Like a Tree and Get Out of Here edition.
You know you sound like an idiot when you get it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. You always sound like a damn fool. So I'm guessing people will be listening to this on October 21st, 2015.
Exactly, which
Yes.
is Future Day. It's when Marty and Doc go to the future, where there's flying cars and hoverboards and
Pepsi Perfect and
Jaws 19 and self-drying clothes.
Yeah. All of these things, they got about a week to get it sorted.
Yeah. So they got to pull their thumb out.
But this is the actual Future Day, and not like I remember about 5 years ago. Many people assumed it was Future Day because of the bit where Doc Brown in the first film was going to go 25 years into the future before the Libyans turn up. And
right.
I remember there was a lot of, back when I used to be on Facebook back then, there used to be a lot of posts saying, oh, it's Back to the Future Day and all this. And I'm thinking, no, it's not, guys, not for another 5 years.
Yeah, there was, they had the same thing last year about this time. Oh, it's Future Day. It's like, no, next year, 2015.
Yes. I do want to know what happened to the other 14 Jaws films that we never got.
Well, I think Jaws the Revenge killed it.
Yes. Yeah. But they did get, what is it? They always say they got half the things right and half the things wrong. But yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, I've noticed teenagers are not wearing their jeans inside out for a start. And we've already mentioned loads of the others.
Yeah, video games are still played with their hands.
Exactly. They're still a baby's toy.
We don't have any nostalgia shops where they sell stuff from the 20th century.
No, exactly. And the M25 is still blocked. We do not have a skyway.
No. And they can't predict the weather either to the second.
No, that's true. That's true. But
it's
other
still,
than that,
though, in the future they still have fax machines, which we don't.
Indeed, so we beat them on that. And apparently, Pepsi Perfect is going to be available from next week. So I've heard.
I know. I mean, they technically have made a hoverboard, just nothing you could go out, and it's certainly not a bulldog.
No, and we're not hydrating our pizzas either at home.
No, we're not. No, we're still microwaving
them. But hey, you know, we say all of this with utter fondness. In fact, it's hard to believe it's been 30 years, isn't it? That's scary because that was such a throwaway, you know, number. 30 years in the future that they said at the time, and it's like, oh my God, we're actually here. That's scary.
Oh well.
But
let's go down memory lane.
Yes.
The year 1985 when the first Back to the Future came out. Now, did you see this at the cinema? Because I didn't.
Well, I actually did. Yes, this was one of those. Normally on the memory lane things we talk about, you know, video VHS days and whatever. And my good friend Wayne that I've mentioned before, who used to come over for Saturdays watching videos. On this particular Saturday, we got on our bikes. That's how long ago it was, push bikes, and we cycled down to the Bournemouth cinema to see this film. So yes, I was fortunate enough to actually see this one on the big screen.
Wow, I didn't. I remember going on a field trip at school on the tube and seeing the posters. There's the big high posters of Marty McFly with the car, the Drew Struzan poster. And
wonderful poster.
It is, and it's just stuck with me for a long time. I saw it on VHS the year afterwards at Christmas time. My dad rented it for us, and we also had my aunt and her family there, and it was the first time we saw it, you know, as a family and stuff. And I just remember it being, thought it was great. I really enjoyed it, and of course the end part with the clock tower was really tense, and that certainly sort of stuck with me.
Yeah. No, no, absolutely. Like I said, I remember, it was a Saturday, it was not a school day, so we were able to cycle down and see it at the cinema. And at the time, I wanted to see it just because it said Steven Spielberg presents, and it had obviously this really, really cool poster, like you've already mentioned, and went to see it, not really knowing too much about it. And was absolutely blown away. I mean, loved every minute of it. Was totally taken on the journey. Um, Thought Marty McFly was cool. He was a few years older than what I was at the time, but I thought, this guy's cool, and this is an interesting type of hero, and yeah, just I really wanted a DeLorean.
I remember back in the day, even then, that DeLoreans were considered a joke.
Oh
They
yeah,
were considered this the Skoda of its time.
yeah, definitely.
So I got the joke when Doc Brown said, I wanted to make a time machine out of something classic.
Yeah,
Yeah, because everybody else considered it to be a pile of junk.
yeah, yeah. No, it was good. The comedy, the action, everything just worked really well in it. And I mean, a real credit to Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, because I think the actual story and idea was really good for starters, but then beautifully executed by everybody else involved.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing, because originally the story was just about what would it be like to go back and see your parents as teenagers.
Absolutely.
I mean that's just the starting block, and then they built this sort of action adventure comedy on top of it, and it just works so well. But it's nice that you still got the whole thing with Marty meeting his parents and having to, because he's interrupted the timeline, interfered with how events should have played out, that he has to go back and correct them.
Yeah.
And it's just marvelous. It just works so well, and it just helps drive the film, because you have these two goals that he has to achieve. He has to get his parents back together, otherwise he won't exist. But he also has to get back to the future as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time he can do that is when the lightning bolt hits the clock tower.
Yeah. So you've got a ticking clock, quite literally, and yeah, you've got he's up against these. It is the perfect mixture of sort of suspense and sci-fi and action and comedy, and they've kind of they got the formula in this film absolutely perfect. Everything from Dean Cundy's cinematography to Alan Silvestri's wonderful score that went with this, to of course all of the amazing performances. I mean, it really works, on every level. And I've never met anyone that actually doesn't like this film.
No, I don't know anybody who doesn't like this film. I'm sure there are.
I'm sure there's haters out there, absolutely. But
but I just talking about the score, it's interesting how the first film, the intro to it's very low key, as in you don't get the Back to the Future fanfare that you do with the following two films. So you get the Universal logo and there's no sound, and then you just hear the sounds of Doc Brown's laboratory. The whole sequence where you see like his breakfast being prepared.
It's a wonderful
and the TV
shot
coming on. It is, though. I know somebody who doesn't like that scene.
Really? Why?
Yeah, Terry Gilliam.
Really? Oh my God.
Terry Gilliam feels that Spielberg ripped him off because he has a similar sequence in Brazil.
Right. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Because in Brazil, there's a sequence where Sam Lowry's breakfast is being made, but of course it's all going wrong. So in Brazil, like tea's being poured onto his toast, and you know, all kinds of things are going wrong.
They should look at it as a homage.
Yeah, yeah, it probably was. I mean, Spielberg does watch a lot of stuff, so don't know if it was his idea to put it in there, but for the film, it works really well. It's a great introduction, and then of course you get the whole sequence with Marty and the amp.
Yeah, well, I mean that clock sequence, not only is it, wonderfully thematic, because of course it's
Mm.
completely about time, okay, but also, you learn everything you need to know about the Doc Brown character before you even meet him. I mean, it's wonderful in terms of, you know, um, setting up things that are going to pay off later, and uh informing character as well as plot and as well as thematics and whatever. It's just, I think it's just a wonderful opening to the film, and I
Yeah.
love it.
Well, you get the news piece about how some plutonium's gone missing.
Which is key.
Yes, very key. Yeah, it's a great sequence.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody listening to this podcast, it's going to be. I think it's true to say this is probably going to be a bit of a love fest podcast, because there is no movie hell as
No,
such.
this is just gonna be movie heaven.
Exactly, and for me it is, obviously the first film, it was never intended originally to have a sequel, and it works, beautifully on its own as a standalone film. But in terms of the trilogy itself, it is one of my all-time favorite trilogies, and it's one of those franchises that, I don't know how many times I've dipped into in terms of purchasing. I bought them all on VHS when they were first released. Then they released
Yep,
them as
same here.
widescreen versions with a tape of bonus features, which I got, that made up the picture of the DeLorean. And then, when it came out on a special edition DVD, I bought that, and then 5 years ago I bought the Blu-ray. And would you believe it? Well, of course you wouldn't. It's marketing, but they've gone and re-released it again now on Blu-ray for its 30th anniversary edition, with even more new special features and bits and pieces. So it's like, damn it.
Yeah, but there's a discrepancy between the British disc and the American
There
disc. The
is.
Americans, they get the cartoon
Yes.
series, which we don't
Well, we
get.
get 2 episodes, but they get the entire 26 episodes. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, because as a side thing, I am so tempted to either do a website or a blog or another YouTube channel or something called BR DVD Minefield, to cover these
Oh,
things, because
right.
it's always been the same ever since DVDs started. It's always been, a bit of a crapshoot in terms of which version you should buy if you want to if you want to be a completist like I always do, and you want the best versions with the best extras and the best this and the best that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we've got a version here that comes in the flux capacitor casing and whatever, but exactly as you've pointed out, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because I did want to get onto that, is that the UK version, yeah, it has the new documentary and it has the booklet, but it doesn't have the animated series, which I have to say I've not. Even though I'm a massive fan of the 3 films, I've not actually seen the animated series, which I think would be
Oh, really?
fantastic to get hold of.
It was all right. What it did was it made Doc Brown's kids, Jules and Vern, more the center of the story. So Doc and Marty were sort of more bit players.
Right.
So it was all right. I remember enjoying watching it, and each week they go to a different
Yeah.
time zone and different adventures. It was very much like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the cartoon series.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought, what a great. I mean, I was aware of the cartoon series. I just never happened to see them, but I always remembered that it was a really good concept. I thought, I always looked at it as Doc, Marty, and Einstein sort of adventures in time. But obviously, they chose to go more with the kids angle by the sounds.
Oh yeah, I think Einstein was a big player in it as well. just off the top of my head. I mean, it's been a long time since I saw it, but yeah, it was about that time when a lot of films had cartoon spin-offs, because you had what I already mentioned, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but you also had Beetlejuice.
Right.
Beetlejuice had its own cartoon series as well. So
Right. Do you know another bit of silly trivia, but it always kind of makes me chuckle in terms of what's happening? So apparently, as you probably know, before it ended up with Universal, this kind of went round all the studios, you know, and nobody until Zemeckis had massive success with *Romancing the Stone*. Kind of, you know, none of the studios were particularly interested. And what makes me laugh is, the story is that Disney passed on it because of the scene where she kisses. Sorry. The Marty's kissed by his mother, and they were like, "Oh my god, you know, that's incest. You know, we can't have that." But it makes me laugh that Disney now own the Star Wars franchise, but it's fine that you've got Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker kissing in Empire.
well, see, the difference is they didn't
Yeah,
know.
oh, that's right. Yeah, they had no idea. Yeah.
It was funny. I mean, also the fact that originally it was Eric Stoltz in the role of Marty McFly, and not Michael J. Fox. And I believe if it wasn't on the previous Blu-ray release, it's on this one where they've actually released most of the
Well,
footage.
yeah, they've basically what they've done, because I mean, obviously that story's been, you know, known about widely for years, but that you could never, other than the odd photograph, you could never really see
Mm.
any of the footage as such. Now, on the one they released 5 years ago, they did have a few brief shots of it, but it was with interviews going on over the top, so you didn't actually hear any
Oh,
of the
right.
dialogue. And you know, they shot for 5 weeks, so they did a lot of the Hill Valley. They pretty much did all the Hill Valley Square sequences and the stuff at like Doc Brown's place and the stuff in Twin Pine Malls. So they'd actually done an amazing amount with it. But what I always found so interesting with it was the fact that you know, even down to the wardrobe choices were completely different. I mean, it would be
Oh God, yeah. Eric Stoltz's hair.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he had this kind of crazy hairdo, and he had like,
Mm.
and he was dressed in black. And you obviously didn't have the life preserver joke in that version of the
No.
script, because you know, he didn't wear a body warmer, and you know, it was very different. And obviously, you know, quite a sad story, because I actually really like Eric Stoltz. But you know, obviously he wasn't quite working out right for the comic timing, and you know, they'd always originally wanted Michael J. Fox, but obviously until they were able to strike a deal with the producers of Family Ties, you know, that wasn't looking like an option. And now, of course, it's hard to imagine anyone else being Marty McFly. Obviously,
I'd say something. There is one shot of Eric Stoltz that's remained in Back to the Future. And I was doing some research today, and I found this on
all right.
YouTube. There is one shot, and it's the bit when Marty McFly punches Biff Tannen in the restaurant.
Oh,
Because the
is
close
that
up, that is Eric Stoltz's
wow?
punch.
Okay.
If you look at it, because the one thing you can tell is that Biff Tannen looks very fresh faced, and also the blind behind him is actually open, but in all the other shots it's closed.
Interesting. Oh my God, you make me want to put
It's
it in now and watch it. But okay, I mean, the thing is, obviously, in a parallel universe somewhere else where they probably do have flying cars and Pepsi Perfect and things of that nature, as they showed it in Fringe, there is a version of Back to the Future starring Eric Stoltz, which is always a nice little in joke in Fringe that I liked.
yeah. But I mean, I don't know if it would have been the success it was,
Who knows? Who knows?
as you say, because they changed things to be for Michael J. Fox. So, you know, and also the actors got to go through it again. And I'm sure it just improved their performances
Yeah,
the second
I'm
time
sure.
round.
I'm sure. I mean, you know, they were fortunate to be able to sort of go to that, length to be able to do all of that stuff again. But I guess when you've got Steven Spielberg as your producer, then then these sort of things can happen. So
Yeah.
um, but what a wonderful movie. It really is. And it's a completely sort of non-offensive, enjoyable family fun ride, isn't it? Basically,
Yeah.
it works on so many levels, and I love it.
I was quite interesting because, again, I was sort of just going back to sort of doing some research today. I saw an interview with Crispin Glover.
Mhm.
And as we know, Crispin Glover was only in the first film,
Yes.
and he didn't return to parts 2 or 3 because of what was, according to the producers, a pay dispute.
Mhm.
But according to Crispin Glover, it was more a fact that he sort of took offense to certain things, which he didn't want to go into. But he did say that he wasn't a fan of the ending to the original Back to the Future, because he felt that because everything had worked out well for the McFlys, that money was their reward.
Right.
Because, they go from, I don't know.
Oh yeah, being quite poor to having loads of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And in his eyes, he saw that the reward was money, when the reward really should have been love.
Yeah. Well, this was the mid-80s.
Which is true. Yeah. But I mean, I see his point, but I think that was a great way of just showing how much had changed.
Yeah.
Because but the thing was, in the story, that there were certain beats that came back. So at the beginning, Marty McFly is talking to Jennifer about how he doesn't know if he's good enough. What if they listen to his tape and they just say, "Get out of here, kid. We don't want to know." He said, "I couldn't take that kind of rejection."
Yeah.
And then, of course, when he talks to his father in the past, his father says
Oh
exactly the
yeah.
same thing
No,
about his writing.
it's wonderfully layered. I mean, it is wonderfully layered.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of those stories, I guess, we'll never really know, because obviously from the production's point of view, it was that Crispin Glover wanted equal billing with Michael J. Fox, and that he wanted more money, and he made like kind of a list of demands, and then this is why they ended up to sort of write the character out of the second film and replaced him with Jeffrey Weissman.
They didn't write him out.
Well, I mean, they wrote a lot of what they
but
were going to do with him out. Hence why he's kind of
yeah.
in the alternate 1985. He's in the cemetery. He's dead. And then of course they had to come up with this contraption again that we don't have in 2015. Where what do they call it? The orthopod or whatever. Was it where you've got
when he's floating upside
exactly?
down.
So they got the actor Jeffrey Weissman hanging upside down, so it's not so obvious that it's not the same actor. And of course they've aged him up 30 years and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's a shame.
Can I just say something about that? I didn't know this, and this came out the Crispin Glover interview, but there was a change in the SAG rules because they used a cast of Crispin Glover's face to do the makeup. And so people thought that actor was actually Crispin Glover.
Yeah.
And there's a now rule in SAG where they can't do that.
Interesting.
You can't use like an actor's likeness and put it onto somebody else just because you're having a dispute with them.
Well, yeah, fair enough. Interesting. So that's a way the industry's changed slightly as a result of that film. There you go.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. I mean, it's a shame because I actually thought in the first film, Crispin Glover as George McFly was wonderful, whether he was playing him, old or young. I thought the performance was hilarious, and it was just fantastic, and it's a shame because it would have been interesting to see where they may have gone with that character, had things worked out.
Yeah, but I mean, it was, I don't know, in some ways it kind of was for the best because it just then made the story more about Doc Brown and Michael J. Fox. Sorry, Marty McFly. But I have to say, second one's this weird mix. I enjoy it, but you can see it's kind of like it's a joiner between the first one and the third one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is that dark second act, isn't it? Like The Empire Strikes Back in the original Star Wars trilogy. It's that.
Yes, but no, but my point being that that in the first one and the third one, you can see there's a lot more effort put into it. Now, I'm not saying the second one. I mean, there's some really nice stuff in that. I mean, the fact that they went back to the first part and they did the whole thing with Marty McFly trying to get the sports almanac off Biff while all this is going on from the first one. So trying not to interfere with that,
Yeah,
was really well done. And I didn't mind the whole sort of future stuff, but it's the thing about the first and the third ones is there's a greater, well, the first one's about Marty and the third one's about Doc Brown, and the second one is kind of like it's not really either. They're just sort of, it's more about, well, Biff's changed the past, so we have to go back and correct it, otherwise we're going to be stuck in this hellhole.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting you say this because another good friend of mine, Ian, my good friend Ian, he's a big fan of Back to the Future, but he actually doesn't like the second part. And for me, I mean, obviously, I know the first one is the greatest, and that's a movie in its own right, and whatever, right? But in terms of looking at it as a trilogy or the sequels, I've always kind of loved the second part, and I like the second part because you've obviously got three parts to the second part. So you've got the whole
Yeah.
future, or sorry, now, which seems weird. Where's that dust-proof paper? We haven't got that, have we? But anyway, no, you've got.
Well, you mean a dust jacket?
Exactly. So we've got you've got that. Then you've obviously got the alternate 1985, which I love that idea of the ripple in time changing everything, and Biff changing history to suit him. And a lot of the humor and the jokes, although very dark, in that section. And then of course you've got the like you said, the 1955, but seen from alternate Marty's perspective, and all this sort of thing, which was very cleverly done. I mean, in terms
Yeah.
of the craft and the way that they actually accomplished all of this stuff. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But of course, I mean, it is a film that doesn't leave you with a conclusion, because you have to, if you watch part two, you have to watch part three. It's kind of to get to the end of
Yeah.
it. But
That was the annoying thing. I mean, I saw parts 2 and 3 at the cinema, and back in '89, when you saw part 2, and then you saw that to be continued, and then you saw they had like a trailer for the third part there, and you were like, oh, how long do I have to wait for this? Oh, till the summer?
it wasn't that long, was it? It was a few months, but it wasn't too bad. But
No, it was the summer, because Back to the Future Part 2 came out just before Christmas '89.
that's right.
And we didn't get Back to the Future Part 3 until the summer of '90.
Yeah, but it was something to look forward to. Don't forget, these were the days when you had to be patient, not like nowadays where it's all fucking the
True.
same day and all this shit. But I mean, yeah, I kind of, I have to say, I mean, I think when I saw the second one, I may have actually, because obviously 5 years had moved on, I may have actually been like on a date. I think, and I think this was the
Ooh.
shape of things to come. The girl was totally pissed off with me because I was way more into the movie than I was her. But hey, we won't go there. But no, I did, unfortunately. But no, I really enjoyed that second act, and it was a shame. One of the things I thought was a shame, and it's funny, I always have a chat. Me and Ian always talk about this, or I've previously mentioned. He always jokes it is, there's always someone who's got to ruin it. We talk about in many film franchises, and many of the ones that we like, sadly, due to various reasons, and it always happens. Sometimes you'll get an actor that can't reprise their role, and they have to recast it. And obviously Claudia Wells, who
Yeah.
played Jennifer, she had some personal problems with her family and had to take care of her mum and wasn't available. So
Yeah.
they cast the equally lovely Elizabeth Shue for parts 2 and 3. But obviously it is quite jarring, because even though they try and dress her up and make her up, it's clearly not the same person. And I always thought that was kind of a shame, of not keeping it absolutely perfect because you have a change of actor, bit like Savick in the Star Trek films. It was always kind of a shame, but this is what
I have
happened.
to say, I didn't mind. Watching Back to the Future again recently. I have to say she's very wooden as an actress,
Who is which one?
and not Elizabeth
Oh,
Shue,
Claudia
but
Wells. Yeah.
yes, and I think, I mean, there was a lot of ADR going on there as well, so I'm not sure, but well, I mean, Elizabeth Shue, I mean, she brought a little bit of extra something to the role, but again, her role still wasn't that big. I mean, she was a bit more involved in the first part of Back to the Future Part 2, but then she was left on a bench, and
Yeah,
that was
they
it.
put
I
her to
mean,
sleep.
to the end of Part 3.
Exactly. I mean,
Well, they didn't put her to sleep, but she passed out from seeing her future self,
exactly.
didn't
Yeah.
she?
Yeah. Well, she's put to sleep for a bit, and then she passes out
Mm.
after seeing her future self. But yeah, I mean, always interesting when they recreated that final scene of the first film. Obviously, as well as her being different, suddenly Marty's wristwatch appears out of nowhere, which which I always found distracting as well. I was like, he wasn't wearing a watch in the first one.
I have to say, Back to the Future Part 3 has got one of the worst cuts in it in all three films. It's the bit where Clara's given Doc Brown the telescope to look through, and he just, and to the end of the scene, they just have Marty go, "Nice telescope," and then it just cuts straight to the party, and it's just horrible. That's just like, I would have cut that. I would have cut Marty's line out because it was just really horrible. I mean, it's just the thing about the third one is that Marty McFly is kind of put to the sidelines a little bit. I mean, this one is more Doc Brown's story.
We get him to have this love story, don't you? Which is
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
But yeah,
But I mean, you get to see he's more involved.
Yeah.
Because in the first part you see more Marty than Doc Brown, and then again with the second one, and then so the third one it's more Doc Brown, and with Marty having to come to the rescue. And so some of the scenes he's kind of, he's kind of just left to say a few one-liners, like that bit when he sees the pie container, it goes frisbee, and he goes frisbee, far out.
Yeah, yeah.
And then his relatives from the past go, "Well, you just said it." I mean, there's the other thing as well, because with parts 2 and 3, Michael J. Fox suddenly wanted to play more roles as well. In part 2, not only did he play Marty McFly, but he played both the kids and the elder Marty McFly.
Yeah, yeah. No, he was Marlene, and all of these other characters, which was
Marty McFly
Marty
Jr.
McFly Jr. Yes, and Marlene McFly, and and then of course in the third one it got even worse.
Yeah, I mean, he was creepy as the daughter, but then his Irish accent was very Irish, wasn't it? Oh, I'm an American doing Irish
Young
accent.
Marty.
Oh,
Yes, yeah.
I thought I'd come here today. I thought it had something to do with my future.
No, I mean, the third one though, it was also an excellent, comedy western.
Oh, it's a great homage to westerns.
Yeah.
I mean, the shot when he walks in into the town is taken straight from Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, and also I love Alan Silvestri does the sort of Western version of the score, and there's a great theme. There's an absolutely great theme that they use in that episode, throughout it, which I think is brilliant. Yeah. And but of course, even this film, you've got all these wonderful payoffs to things that happened in 2, right down to him seeing Biff watching you know, Clint Eastwood on the television and stuff like that. It's great.
Yeah, for a few dollars, for a fistful of dollars,
Yeah.
yes. And he gets the whole, because he plays Clint Eastwood, and you see him at the gunfight, and he's wearing oh, what do they call it?
Poncho. Yeah.
Poncho. Thank you
With
very
the
much.
bulletproof vest.
So yeah, it was a nice touch, and it's, I have to say, I mean, the actor who played Biff Tannen.
Yeah, Thomas F. Wilson. He's brilliant.
You know, he is great in all these films, and the fact that he gets to play Biff Tannen in so many different states, including playing his great granddad,
Mad Dog.
you know, Mad Dog. I hate that name, Mad Dog. Menu. I hate Menu.
Yeah, I mean it's brilliant. I mean, it's brilliant at all.
Yeah.
You know, in this case, you know, we've talked in other podcasts about, you know, films that self-reference and how it can get a bit winky and a bit cheesy and all this. Obviously, because of the tone of these films, you know, all of the self-referencing actually really works nicely. You know,
It does, but I mean, it's not self-referencing itself. It's sort of self-referencing the times. Because,
exactly.
The nice thing is, because it's, you know, you imagine a kid from '85 who's gone back in time, or gone to the future, or back in even more in time. He, you know, he would come up with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, and of course, you know, at the time, I mean, we do it all of the time now with film franchises, but at the time, you know, filming the parts 2 and 3 back to back, you know, what wasn't that common. I mean, I think the Soul
No, it
Kinds
wasn't.
had done it with the Musketeers movies or something, and
Well, they had
and
done it with Superman,
Superman
1 and 2.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but obviously, you know, this was a little bit more unusual at the time. And then, of course, the other thing with this film, again, it all works for the story, but was, you know, the amount of product placement in this franchise is unbelievable. But again, it all works. I mean, I remember I really wanted a JVC, you know, VHS-C camcorder. I was amazed by that. And now when you think, you know, the iPhone 6S that they've just launched, you can actually record in 4K on that, and it's like, my God. So there you go. There is something, but
Yeah.
you know.
Well, this is the thing. If they were to remake these
Oh
films, I
God.
mean, you would have all that come in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'll say this: if it's a film they could remake, because you'll have somebody who's coming from, you know, 2015 and going back in time.
Yes. Yeah.
But if it would be the same or not, it just all depends on who's involved and what they're doing. If they do it as like if they take the concept of somebody who's from 2015 going back in time to, say, 1955 or 1965 or 1975, it would work really well if they keep to that concept and don't make it self-referential to any of the Back to the Future films. Just make it its own Back to the Future film, and it would work really well.
Yeah.
But that's not how Hollywood works. They would have to say, "Oh, you remember Back to the Future? You remember that film you liked? Well, here it is with, you know, some fresh face in it, but it's the same old shit that's happened last time."
Yeah. I mean, I think with this, you know, the cocktail of all the people involved, you know, it just works so well. And even down to, you know, you were talking about the poster design. I mean, I just love the fact that even with that, they were smart, you know. So you've got the 2 characters in the second part and the 3 characters in the third poster, and you know, all of that stuff, everything about it just works so well.
And the car, you notice as well that the car design on each one is different.
Absolutely.
Because in the second one, it's got the oh, what's that device he has?
The Mr. Fusion instead of
Mr. Fusion.
Yeah.
And then on the third poster, you can see the railway wheels on there.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. No, I mean, it's you know, in terms of layers, and you know, I love multi-layered stuff, and this film, I mean, that's the beauty. You can almost like watch these things even now and pick out stuff that you might not have noticed. I mean, that is the brilliant thing. They are so good for repeat viewing because there are so many Easter eggs all over the place in the actual design of this film, you know, and and Lawrence G. Paul and Alan Carter, the production designers, both did fantastic jobs on those movies.
I want to say there's one Easter egg that they repeat in parts 1 and parts 3 that I really like, and the fact is they get either the lead singer or the band of the song to be in the film. So in the first one you had Huey Lewis.
You're just too darn loud.
That's it. And then in the third one you get ZZ Top at the
That's right. Which is cool, which is very cool. But
well, because ZZ Top looks like they come from the 1885.
That's true. That's true. They had the beards. They had their own beards. But Rick Carter and Lawrence G. Paul, as production designers, I think, along with Dean Cundy and Alan Silvestri and all those guys, deserve a lot of credit as well. As do ILM for the effects on these movies, which pretty much hold up quite well even by today. It's interesting, actually. Next Wednesday, they're actually doing a re-release at the cinema of all 3 films as a sort of special future day. Or sorry, tonight. If you're not listening to this podcast, you might be at future day. But again, it'll be interesting to see them on the big screen again, because and see how well they look.
Did you see Back to the Future when it had its re-release recently? When it had its 2K restoration?
Wait, how long ago was that? Because I did go to
a couple of years ago.
Okay, yes.
It was a couple of years ago.
Well, I went and I was really sad. And the reason I was really sad is I went to this, I booked a seat for it and everything. And I turned up and there were literally about half a dozen people in the cinema watching it, and I was like, really?
Right.
I was like, what the fuck, really? I was so upset that more people hadn't gone to see it. It's kind of like, it made me feel old. It was like, oh my god, look at me all wrapped up in nostalgia, and the young kids out there don't give a shit. It's like but yeah, so I did see it on the big screen a few years back, when they did that, and it looked good. I remember it looking good.
Yeah,
I remember you could see the makeup, because obviously, this is back when they were aging characters using prosthetic effects, which they did very well. But of course, when you remaster something in high def, everything becomes even clearer. And obviously, one of the areas where that can kind of suffer sometimes is you can notice things like makeup, prosthetics, and things of that nature much more than probably intended. So that would probably be the only thing that
yeah, I mean, yeah, you see that a lot in sort of older films.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, I mean, I think apart from that, I mean, the makeup effects work really well.
Oh, they do. I mean, I'm not knocking them. I think they're brilliant. I'm just saying that the high def enhances the detail more, that you can probably notice it a bit better. But not that what you notice doesn't look amazing, because yes, they did a really good job. In fact, I found that, again, sort of bringing things back to today, one of the things I found quite interesting in the pre-credit sequence to Ant-Man earlier this year was the fact that the scene that was supposed to be set at the Triskelion in the 80s at the beginning, they used 3 different film techniques to alter the ages of the actors. So you had Haley Atwell as Agent Carter, obviously supposed to be 35, 40 years younger or whatever, and they used prosthetic makeup to change her. Then they had Michael Douglas that they'd use CGI to make look 40 years younger, and then they had a different actor playing the older version of Howard Stark. So you had kind of 3 different techniques, all of which worked, but in one scene of how to show age difference. And I thought that was quite interesting.
I mean, I think with Michael Douglas, I did hear that they had taken footage from like other films and manipulated it.
What, Romance in the Stone and whatever?
No. I heard I heard Wall Street being mentioned.
Oh, right.
This was being talked about. But I mean, it's they've sometimes with the Marvel films, when they've used CGI to age people, it's been quite noticeable.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the things I did notice in Winter Soldier,
Right.
when with Agent Carter,
Yeah.
because I think they used CGI on her in that scene when he visits her, and yeah,
Yeah.
and I remember that sort of not looking so great. So maybe that's why they went with sort of more makeup this time instead of CGI on her.
Yeah. Yeah. That was quite interesting,
Mm.
but you know, yeah, even that in Back to the Future, I think was you know, well ahead of its time, and no pun intended, and worked really well. And you know, it is a fabulous trilogy of films.
Yeah.
That you know, as I said, I still love. I'm actually quite tempted to get the US edition of the new Blu-ray trilogy with the cartoon set as well. I'm quite interested to get that now, but
Well, let's hope it's region free, because
yeah.
if it is, then I might get that purchase. Because, like yourself, I have owned this on sort of every kind of media going, apart from Blu-ray. So,
Yeah.
um, so I might sort of go out there and get it. But
Yeah. Well,
you know how.
much as I'm against you know, pirating and all of the problems that, you know, come along with that, the one thing that does sort of piss me off with the studios and the industry out there is this whole, you know, regionalization of you know, DVDs or downloads or Blu-rays or whatever. It's kind of annoying, particularly as now the actual release dates for the films themselves are much closer than they've ever been. I just don't see why you just can't have a sort of worldwide standard and can get it everywhere. You know, it's
Things are changing. It's just, I mean, the fact that you still have regions and you have different kinds of certification and censorship, and and for all the sort of tentpole films that all come out at the same time, other films, they are spread out and have like a normal, what we would call a normal release pattern, where it would go from country to country. So
yeah,
for every Marvel film that all comes out at the same time, you'll have another film like Frank that is here in Britain in the summer, and then but doesn't get released until the next year in the US. So it's that they have to do that. And also the fact that like with the Back to the Future discs, I think one of the reasons why we don't get the whole cartoon series is because they had to pay for each episode to be certificate.
Oh yeah, the BBFC. Yeah, no,
And it
absolutely.
would cost. It's just not worth the
Well,
money.
that's why you don't get extras sometimes, for that very reason, because all of that has to go through, and yeah, often.
It wasn't always the case. It wasn't always the case, but it is now. Every minute of footage on a disc has to be watched by the BBFC, and you can't pay for it for every minute of footage that they have to watch.
I understand. I do understand the economics behind and the reasons behind these things. It's just a frustration, and sometimes you can see why it leads to you know, to piracy and things of that nature, which is a shame. But
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Because I mean, also we've had films that we've not been released here. We still haven't seen Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer still has not been
oh
released in this
yes, yes, you've
country.
mentioned this before. Yeah, okay, interesting.
And and the only way you can see it is piracy, or if you've got access to American Netflix.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know,
It's
it is
crazy.
crazy.
Oh well, there you go.
Anyway,
But
let's go back to the future.
which by the way was almost called, what was it, Spaceman from Pluto or something? Did you hear that story?
Something like that, yeah.
But yeah, thank God it was Back to the Future.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. Oh, yeah. A better title always sort of presents itself, and usually, but when you're first starting out, you come up with all kinds of titles. I mean, Blood and Roses originally was going to be called There Will Be Blood.
ah, interesting.
Yeah. And then suddenly a Paul Thomas Anderson film came out, and we had like, oh, we better change the title.
Yeah, things like that always happen. But
Yeah. So I was just going to ask you, what's your favorite scene from the
oh
films?
my God, okay, that's like trying to pick a favorite child or whatever, isn't it?
Come on, we all have them.
Oh, Well, tell me yours while I'm thinking of mine, because I can't think of one off. I mean, I love it all.
Well,
That's the trouble.
I always liked the low key opening to part three, where you had the that Marty's taken Doc back to his
Yeah.
house, and it's raining, so you get to see what happens after the the thunderstorm,
Yes.
and that whole bit with him waking up and not realizing how he got back there, and then when he sees Marty freaking out. I mean, always enjoyed that scene.
Yeah. No, I mean that was really good at filling in gaps visually. And having that whole sequence where you see all that stuff. I mean, I have to say, my room is starting to look like bloody Doc Brown's home at the moment, because where I'm trying to sort of work on scripts and films and write things, and I've got piles of Blu-rays and DVDs and paperwork and reference books, and yeah, it's looking a bit of a mess. No, I think a scene that I really like is actually from part two, and but it doesn't involve George, Marty, or Doc. It's the scene between young Biff and old Biff, and it's the
Yes.
scene where he's in the car with him, and they're talking about him using the sports almanac to change his life and to bet on the stuff, and he says, don't let it out of your sight. Have you got a safe? No, of course you haven't. Get yourself a safe, and all that stuff. And then, of course, you have to pay off, in the first film, where they never intended to have the sequel, just to make Biff look like an idiot. They did that whole make like a tree and get out of here thing. And they have him
Yeah.
say it, and then he has him correct himself and have a go at himself for looking like an idiot and all this sort of stuff. And I actually think that's a great scene. That's a brilliantly written and performed scene. That's what love.
And also the fact you have the same actor playing two roles on the same screen, and it's seamless. You don't really see
Yeah.
where they've split the screen, or where they've used maybe a body double and stuff like that.
No, what I want to say about that, there is one slightly dodgy effect, though, by today's standard, and that's where it's slightly old school, because it is a split screen thing, where he throws the almanac and says, well, leave and take your book with you, and he throws it, and it's clearly an animated almanac that goes between them.
Right.
but it's a great scene, so who cares?
Can I just say something though? Because you said it was just the scene with those two. You're wrong. Marty is in the back of the car.
He's in the back listening to it all. That's true.
Yes.
And and of course, when he throws the book, that's when it lands on him, and there's that wonderful bit. Yeah. So there's some nice tension in there as well. But yeah. But no, that's a great scene. But it is hard to pick, because there are so many fucking wonderful scenes across that trilogy. So
there is. Also, I mean, I just want to say, I always love the fact that in all the films where the car jumps to the past or the future, you don't see it go off.
Yes.
So you're there with them, and you're straight into the past or straight into the future. So you don't see anything that happens afterwards.
Yeah.
So you don't see Doc Brown standing there all on his own, or apart from at the end of the first one.
Yeah.
We have that lovely they do like this lovely edit where you see Doc sort of dancing in the street and looking up, and then the next shot is the clock tower, and you see a helicopter fly over, just to let you know you're back in the present.
Oh, it's beautifully done. And then of course they redo it in the end of the second one, which
see that, because then Marty runs in, because he's had I have to say, the whole sequence at the end of part two, where he's in the rain and the guy comes up to me, he goes, "Are you Marty McFly?"
Yeah.
It's like, "Yes, I have a letter for you." That sequence, great.
It's clever.
I do like that sequence. Yeah.
The other scene, another whole scene that I really, really enjoy in the first film, again, I think it is so well done, is the scene where you first meet the whole of the McFly family. So it starts with Lorraine coming in, with the cake that she baked for the jailbird Joey, and he didn't get parole. And then they talk about, the daughter says about the fish under the sea dance, and it's the enchantment under the sea dance, and all of that stuff, and all of George McFly's like, at the TV and all that sort of stuff. That scene's brilliant.
It is brilliant, but it's also brilliant for the fact that you can just tell that she's not in love with him. That whatever infatuation she had with him as a young lady is gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that actually, that I'm glad you said that, because that is a key thing about these films. When you really think about it, even though this is a sci-fi comedy film and you've got actors, you know, like wearing prosthetics and, you know, funny hairstyles and all sorts of things, what is really great about this is the acting is absolutely top notch. I mean, it really is. They're not, you know, even though there's comedy moments in there that work, you know, they are totally not playing it for comedy. And that's a great example. You can tell from Leah Thompson's great performance in that you know, you feel for that character, and you can see that those years of been heavy, you know, taken their toll on her and stuff like that. And that's a really good point. That is so beautifully acted by that young cast. You know, it's really good.
Yes, it's always a shame she did feel kind of wasted in the third one, as in she was just there so they could have the bit where he wakes up and goes, "Oh, I've had a horrible dream."
Yes, exactly. Who are you? You're my. Who are you?
Yeah. Actually, it was quite nice, because usually it's like you're because he's usually going about to say you're my mum.
Yeah.
And then this time it's like, who are you?
Yeah. Now it's great. I mean, again, that works.
Yeah.
That's a lovely bit of timing, and very, very well written, and beautifully performed. And you know, really, really can just keep waxing lyrical about these films, because they are so. It just makes me smile. That's the thing. They make me smile, and they always make me feel good. And it's one of those. It's one of those trilogies that I've always had in my collection all the way through. You know, along with, you know, Bond films and Star Wars trilogies and Die Hard films and Halloween and Terminator, and too many to mention. But you know, they're the ones that I always keep updating whatever version comes out. You know, whether there's more features or a different format or whatever. It's one of those must-haves. And
it is, and it's nice that still now every time I watch it, there's still something I missed. And you know, I'll give you a great example of this, and this is sort of continuity from what happens in the past to the future. So when Marty McFly goes to meet Doc Brown in the first one, he goes to a shopping mall that's called the Twin Pine Malls. So when he goes into the past, he knocks over one of the pines.
Absolutely. And then it's the Lone Pine. When he comes,
exactly, you've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, that was beautifully put in, and very subtle, but yeah, totally.
So subtle that I hadn't caught it until recently.
Oh, really? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I was something like, oh, okay, wait a minute, is that? Oh. I think also because the fact that the time between each time you see those signs is such a long time.
You're right.
You know,
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Because so much has happened. So by the time you get there, you're more concentrated on Marty McFly trying to reach Doc Brown before he gets shot.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of nice little touches. Like, something I liked in the third film was, and it's just a simple little performance-y, actor-y thing, but I like it, is when Marty's asleep by the campfire out in the Old West, he is led in exactly the same position that you see him sleeping at the beginning of the first film before Doc Brown wakes him up. Yeah. And it's little things. Yeah. It's all those little things. And obviously they're completely intentional. They are there for that reason, but they're not telegraphed. They're just sort of things that on multiple watching, you know, you can kind of appreciate and see. And you know,
it doesn't. They don't bring attention to themselves. It's you know they're there, but you don't have to have a flag waving or a big sign going ding 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 ding.
Exactly.
It's just
exactly. By the way, someone who deserves mention as well, even though it's only a supporting character, but great, I think, is James Tolkien as
Mr.
The
Strickland.
Strickland, yes.
Slacker.
Slacker. Again, when he does that bit in alternate 1985 where he's got the pump action shotgun and all of that stuff, brilliant, absolutely
Yeah.
brilliant. I howled with laughter when I first saw that. I thought that was so well done, you know.
Well, I saw a film recently at the London Film Festival. It's Bone Tomahawk,
Right.
and he has a cameo in it, and it was so great to see. There's actually quite a few cameos in this film,
Mm-hmm.
and James Tolkien plays a piano player he's got a great line in How to Make Money. It's really nice seeing that film. And it's got Sean Young in it as well in another cameo, and I didn't recognize her at first, and Michael Pere.
Oh wow, okay.
But as I say, they're only cameos. They only appear in like a scene or two. But it's all about Kurt Russell and that mustache. You've seen it for all the advertising for The Hateful Eight.
Yeah,
he's kept that big walrus mustache for this film.
Kind of suits him. Kind of suits him in a weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, he had a fine moustache in Tombstone.
Indeed, he did. Indeed.
So it's more like an if he had grown that out, this is what it would have become.
I love it. Talking of cameos, did you see A Million Ways to Die in the West?
Well, yes, I did, and yes, I saw the Doc Brown cameo.
Which I love.
It was quite nice. Yeah, it was quite nice. I mean, it's probably the only good bit in that film. I mean, it wasn't. I had a lot of problems with that film. I thought also the shots in that was very lazy. I thought the way they shot things in it was not very good. And also the advertising was very misleading.
Well, the thing is, I think the problem is, I think people were because it was Seth MacFarlane, people were expecting to see, a film like Ted, or something, which it wasn't. I think the problem with it was that Seth MacFarlane clearly has such a massive love for Westerns that he was trying to make, like a good Western and trying to put himself in a good Western. And that was probably, one of the reasons that it maybe didn't work. But I mean, I found it quite amusing, but I absolutely, to keep it on Back to the Future, I absolutely loved the Doc Brown cameo with him in the shed working on the DeLorean, in the Old West. I just thought that was brilliant. And he said about a weather experiment. I was like, yes, that's awesome. And he said, "Great Scott," of course.
I have to say though that he's very good at that, because I love the Flash Gordon cameo.
Oh yes, in Ted.
In Ted.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant, and the way they ended that film as well.
Yeah,
with a flash jump.
Absolutely, yeah.
But speaking of cameos, there's a wonderful cameo in parts 1 and 2 where you get George Buck Flower, who was in a lot of Carpenter's films like They Live,
right,
as playing the bum.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Damn drunk driver.
Yeah. Or damn drunk pedestrians.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Absolutely. It's it has a lot of layers in there, and so much good stuff. And okay, we haven't got flying cars and hoverboards and all of that sort of thing, but as I said, I still think the imagination that went into all of that stuff was really good.
Yeah, it's like when we reached 2001 and we didn't have moon bases, and we weren't flying around the galaxy. So yeah, it's tough sort of trying to predict the future, because we always catch up with it, and it's never quite what it's like.
Yeah. Well, I think Back to the Future gets away with it in the fact that, first of all, because of what the films are tonally, but second of all, because they talk about this whole idea of timelines and alternate realities and things of that nature. And pretty much when, the way the film ends is, the future's not written, like the sort of Terminator stuff. But I think it works quite well in this. And of course, this had a massive impact then on films coming out following it, like obviously in '86, they released a Star Trek film, which is the first of the motion picture films to actually deal with the time travel. With Star Trek 4 and saving the whales and stuff.
I have to say, I don't know if that had any effects on it. I don't think they went, "Ooh, Back to the Future. We must do a time travel one as well," because you've had time travel in Star Trek. I mean, it's been a staple of the Star Trek universe. I mean, I think every incarnation of Star Trek has a time travel
Oh, it
story in it.
does, it does. But I think,
Yeah,
and I'm sure I remember an interview of Harv Bennett about this, where obviously, even though sort of 2, 3, and 4 is like a trilogy of Star Trek
yeah,
films, they obviously didn't have the stories sort of worked out ahead of time, and I think it was like a studio suggestion that because of the popularity of Back to the Future, they do something about time traveling into the past with the Star Trek franchise. I'm sure I did hear an interview where it was part inspiration for that, and
oh,
and then of course the way that the second film dealt with timelines and coming back into different timelines and different alternate realities, of course, has been used as a sort of model with or a reference point with things like the 2009 J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot and the X-Men Days of Future Past, and to an extent with the Terminator film that came out this year, Genesis. They've all sort
yeah.
of borrowed from that concept where you can jump back and change a timeline that will obviously affect the present and change things and allow that to be a sort of way of creative storytelling without necessarily, it's a way of rebooting but without sort of saying that everything that came before didn't matter. It's a sort of fans answer.
I like that about the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek film. I thought Terminator Genesis just took a big giant crap over the James Cameron's films.
I didn't think it was.
No, it did. It bloody well did, and I'm glad it was it was a flop at the cinema because it's just I'm just it's like leave Terminator alone now.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Just let it be.
I have issues and problems with it, but overall, I thought what it was is there were things they did very well, and then there were things they did not so well, and that's the problem. But I thought in terms of the way of rebooting it and kind of tying it in with the first film, I thought they did. There was definitely some nice touches in there, but it was just too much CGI for my liking in the actual action sequences, because you look at that next to the original, or next to Terminator 2, should I say, and even though of course Terminator 2's got its fair share of CGI where it was necessary to create that character, but of the T-1000, but all of the action sequences were still kind of done for real and just enhanced somewhat, whereas in Terminator Genesis, they end up having this helicopter chase, which is just so, you just don't believe it. And it was things like that let it down, in my opinion, rather than the actual idea and storyline.
Well, no, I mean that there's it's a multitude of problems. I mean the fact that they have so many villains for a start. I mean also the fact that Sarah Connor can identify her son, even though he's all grown up, and also the fact that Kyle Reese was to go back. Part of his mission was to get Sarah Connor up the duff, and it doesn't happen. So there is no John Connor. So how can John Connor come back as a Terminator if they're not even had And you're just like,
that's why it's a paradox. You
it's
see,
it's not a paradox. It's a pile of shit that they should have just left alone.
Yeah, well,
I mean, just to me with the Terminator series, it stops with 2. After that, I don't care because they just go downhill all from there. And the fact is, they just do not have the same. I mean, those 2 films, the storytelling in it is great, and everything serves the story. And with the other ones, they're either the greatest hits of Terminator films.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know,
mean, they didn't have the magic of Cameron. That's the problem. But let me ask: did you ever see the Terminator TV series, which picks up after the second film, which David Nutter directed?
I saw, I think the first couple of episodes, and I then gave up.
Yeah, it was. It got cancelled when it was just getting really good, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I was a fan of that. I thought they handled that quite nicely. You know, once I got over the different actor thing, which we've already talked about. But yeah, once I got over that, I was I quite enjoyed what they'd done with that. But yeah, again, Terminator 1 and 2, up there with the Back to the Future trilogy in terms of one of those films that I've owned on every single format that it's been released on, in different versions with different extras and you name it.
Very nice, just bringing it back.
Bringing it back. Yes. Well, otherwise I feel we get into a whole nother podcast with Terminator 1 or whatever.
But yeah, I mean, we'll sort of wrap it up now. But it's, you know, it's great that we finally got to 2015, and maybe, you don't know, maybe Marty and Doc might, you know, appear somewhere. Might appear in Hill Valley 2015, and you know, suddenly they're faced with a new you know, oh dear, with no flying cars and pollution's really bad.
And I look ridiculous with 2 ties.
That's it.
And all those things. Yeah, no, absolutely. But yes, it just leaves us really to say Happy Future Day, everyone.
Yes, Happy Future Day, and I hope you go out and watch Back to the Future, if not at your local cinema, but then on DVD, Blu-ray.
Get the US Blu-ray edition. The flux capacitor box edition. It's all good. Great Scott.
It's heavy.
Yes, that is heavy indeed. There's something wrong with the Earth's gravitational pull. Oh dear, love it. Anyway, that's our love fest for this podcast.
Indeed. And then well, following this, we have another, we've got another special coming up for Halloween, and we've got Clive and Mike joining us for that one, so that's going to be a bumper edition.
That's going to be a mega edition. That's going to be a marathon, isn't it, that one?
It is indeed, but it's going to be out just in time for Halloween, so join us for that.
And it's going to be a heaven hell scenario, isn't it? So yes.
Oh, it is indeed.
Yes.
It is indeed, but it's going to be good fun. So we'll sign off in our normal manner. So Keith, how can we find your work?
Well, if you haven't completely given up on me by now, you can find my work on YouTube. Go to British Eyles, EYLES, as in my last name, and you will find short films that I've written, produced, and directed for your viewing pleasure, or not.
You can find my work at independentrunnings.com, or you can look on YouTube at Independent Runnings. You can also find episodes of this podcast on there as well. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. Also, listen to us on iTunes, and please leave us a rating and hit those 5 stars. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, and thank you to any new listeners that we get. I know that some people have started to tune in and catch up on old podcasts, etc. We do appreciate it, and any feedback is gratefully received.
So until next time, take care.
See ya. Oh, Oh, okay. There was something I was meant to mention about Back to the Future, and I totally forgot. But here you go. It's just a little movie connection for me that I always liked, and that was obviously in Back to the Future when he arrives in 1955. They're playing, Mr. Sandman, and that always used to make me think of one of my other favorite films, which was Halloween 2, with the fact that they play Mr. Sandman at the end when Michael's mask's burning and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I know the films couldn't be further apart, couldn't be polar opposites, but I always kind of just liked the fact that there was a thing linking them, which I think was completely unintentional, but just always was always something that sort of made me smile, if you know what I mean.
Mm. Oh yeah, and I think since Back to the Future, that song's been used quite a bit to sort of, as to say we're in the 50s and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
but
So
obviously
yeah,
Halloween 2 did it before, kind of like in 1981 or whatever. So,
yeah,
yeah, it's just a silly thing, but it was just something I always kind of linked the two films. And the other weird link with those two films is they both have, the end of Halloween 2 picks up exactly where the end leaves off, and the end of
yeah.
Back to the Future 2 picks up exactly where it leaves off. So there is a really weird connection there that's kind of, I think, is a total thing just in my weird head. But I kind of like, because I'm a big fan of the Halloween franchise as well, obviously. So yeah, there you go.